Hi guys, so today's video is going to be a recently read and currently reading video. I'm going to be talking about the books that I've read in December and January, and then I'm just going to talk about what I'm currently reading. Instead of doing TBRs, I've just decided not to do them anymore because it doesn't really make sense for me. I never stick to TBRs. Let's just go ahead and get into the video because I feel like it's going to be a long one. I have a lot of books to talk about. I'll try to keep it short and sweet and to the point. So let's do it. The first book I read in December was Me Before You by Jojo Moyes, and I'd never read a book by her before, so I finally did, and I really enjoyed it. This one, I'm sure you know what it's about, but in case you don't, it's about a quadriplegic man, and our main character kind of becomes his caretaker, and they don't really get along very well at first, so this book is definitely about their relationship and how it develops, and it's just, I really enjoyed seeing the progress that the characters make. It's definitely a heartbreaking story, but it was very enjoyable. I read through it so quickly, so I would definitely recommend it. I ended up giving this one a 4 stars. I can't wait to read the sequel to this book, so very much enjoyed it and I would recommend it. The next thing that I read in December was A Winter Dream by Richard Paul Evans, and if you know me at all, if you've watched my videos before, you probably know that I really enjoy Richard Paul Evans. I'm kind of obsessed with him. He's one of my favorite authors. This was one of his few books that I had not read yet. Probably one of my favorite Richard Paul Evans books now, which is saying something because, like I said, I like them all. This one is actually a retelling of the story of Joseph and the Coat of Many Colors, which I really enjoyed that aspect of it. There's just so much wisdom in this book, and it was very philosophical and just absolutely beautiful. So if you're new to Richard Paul Evans, I would definitely recommend starting with this one because it's just one of his better ones. So amazing. I adored it. I gave it a full 5 stars. Then I read Fat Girl Walking, Sex, Food, Love, and Being Comfortable in Your Skin, Every Inch of It. I can never remember the title without looking at it. That is by Brittany Gibbons, and I'd never heard of her before discovering this book. I just came upon this book at random, but I'm so glad I did. It was fantastic. This is a nonfiction memoir about Brittany Gibbons, who is apparently internet famous. I didn't know this, but she is. For being fat, basically, and it's just about her dealing with that and being fat and being okay with it and embracing it, and it was just so good. I loved everything about it. I laughed out loud multiple times, but while reading this book, it became one of my favorite books of 2015 after I read it, so very much enjoyed it. I would highly recommend it for anyone. It's probably one I would read again, so really liked it. 5 stars. The next book that I read, I loved even more than that one, and it was so influential. I'm gonna rave about it, so just be prepared. That is Big Magic, Creative Living Beyond Fear by Elizabeth Gilbert, who is now one of my favorite authors because of this book. I want to read all of the things by her now. It changed my life. It's changed my outlook on things. Like, I'm just obsessed with this book. I think that if you consider yourself a creative person, or even if you don't, maybe you feel like you're not a creative person but you want to be, or maybe you feel like you can't be creative for some reason, please read this book. It will teach you everything you need to know. I just adored Elizabeth Gilbert's writing. It was so beautiful and so well said. Like, everything she had to say was on point and extremely intelligent, and it's such an amazing book. I could sit here and talk about it forever. I've been trying to get people to read it ever since I read it. I'm just like, please read this book. You have to. It's my Bible now. It's just fantastic. I know I keep saying the same things over and over again, but the point is, you really need to read this book. Like, you have to. And I just realized my lighting is messed up. So I just kind of fixed my lighting. Hopefully that helps. Sorry for the lighting not being good to start with. So yeah. Anyway, full 5 stars. I'd give it 1,000,000 stars if I could. I'm gonna stop talking about it now, so let's just move on. The next book that I read was actually a reread for me, and that was High Society by Ally Carter. I reread this because I had the intention of continuing on with the series, and the first time I read this book was like 4 or 5 years ago, so I definitely needed to refresh my memory. However, now that I've reread it, I feel like I'm probably not going to continue on with the series. I don't know, I feel like I may have maybe outgrown this series, and I hesitate using that word because, like, I don't mean that like you have to be a certain age to read certain books. I don't feel that way, but I don't know, I just enjoyed it more when I read it the first time. This series is about a girl who has grown up in a family of thieves and she tries to get out of the business but gets pulled back in. I can definitely say that I had fun while reading it, but afterward I was just kind of, it was okay. Like I said, I won't be continuing on with the series. I ended up giving this a 3 stars. I think that's what I gave it the first time around, so I just kept the rating the same. The next thing that I read is Perfect Escape by Jennifer Brown, and I just need to start off by saying I absolutely love her books. They are such a breath of fresh air in young adult especially, because her books are not about like romantic relationships. Most of her books are about family relationships, and even if they are about like romantic relationships, it's usually the dark side of them. This one is about a girl named Kendra who basically decides to run away with her brother Grayson, who has pretty severe OCD. But the kicker is her brother has no idea that they're running away because he's asleep in the car next to her when she decides to just take off. So obviously that presents some problems. Her and her brother have some issues that they have to deal with, and she's hoping that this trip will fix that. She's also kind of running away from something herself at home, and it was very, very good. I didn't really like the main character all that much, but the things that I didn't like about her were things that she recognized about herself that she didn't like about herself, and they were things that she realized she needed to work on, so that made her a bit more redeemable. But I did feel like her as a character and her relationship with her brother was real, and it felt genuine. I feel like the author definitely did research on like OCD and family members of people with OCD, and it was just very, very interesting. I enjoyed the story a lot. I gave it a 4 stars. It's definitely one I would recommend. The next thing that I picked up is What Happens Next by Colleen Clayton. I have a video on this, so I'm going to link that down below. I won't talk too much about this, but it's a young adult contemporary book that touches on some very serious topics like rape, and it talks about how the main character is dealing with body issues. It's just such a heavy book, but it's an important one, I think, and it was very well written, and I loved it so much. So definitely go watch my video if you want to hear more about this book, but it's very good. I gave this I think I gave it a 4.5 stars on Goodreads. I would maybe even give it a 5 because it was one that really stuck with me, and like I said, I think it's important to read, so really liked it. The next thing that I read, I kind of have a lot to say about it, so I'm gonna try to keep it short, but it might be kind of hard. That is The Princess Bride by William Goldman. Yes, I was thinking about doing a full review video on this, but I don't know if I want to do that. But anyway, I think most of you guys know what this is about, so I'm gonna skip the synopsis. But I will tell you that if you don't know, part of the book is told okay, this is complicated to explain. It's very weird. The first part of the book is about William Goldman, or more like a fictionalized version of himself, and how he had this book called The Princess Bride read to him when he was a kid. Long story short, he ends up deciding to publish an abridged version of The Princess Bride. And so we get his story leading up to that, then we get the actual abridged version of The Princess Bride in the middle, and then at the end we get more about the fictionalized William Goldman. A lot of people tend to like the whole, like, The Princess Bride being something that he abridged, because it's not true. Just so you know, that's all fiction, part of the story. I didn't like that. I thought it was unnecessary. I didn't like the fictionalized version of William Goldman, so I didn't enjoy that part really at all. I loved the actual story of The Princess Bride. I loved the characters, Buttercup and Wesley and Physic and Inigo. I loved that. And it's definitely a satire, like, so over the top and kind of ridiculous, like a fairy tale story, but it's awesome. I just really enjoyed the actual The Princess Bride book. But the other parts I didn't like. At the end you get like the first chapter of a pretend sequel, and I really despised that chapter. I did like seeing what happened to the characters after The Princess Bride ended, but I just didn't like that chapter at all. So yeah, overall I gave this a 3 stars. I went into this not knowing really anything about it, never seen the movie, never read the book, you know, whatever. So I was kind of confused going in. I didn't know if the part about William Goldman was about the real William Goldman and The Princess Bride was a real book that he abridged. but now I know that it's not. Yeah, anyway, that's my thoughts on the book. Please let me know your thoughts on this book as well, if you agree with what I said or not. I'm just really curious what everyone else thinks. So yeah, but I have to say this is beautiful. I love this cover. It's gorgeous. Okay, moving on. The next thing I read is a graphic novel, and I really wish I had it with me, but I checked it out from the library and it was only a 14-day book, so I don't have it anymore. It is the 3rd volume of Alex and Ada, and it's also the final volume, which makes me really sad because I really, really love this series. I gave this final volume 5 stars. It was fantastic. This graphic novel series is about this guy who ends up getting an android or a robot for his birthday, but in this world, androids are feared because some of them are becoming sentient, and there was a couple of androids who murdered people, so everyone's pretty scared of them. There are some android supporters who believe the androids should be sentient and have like human rights, but a lot of people don't agree with that. So this guy gets an android and, you know, the story unfolds. So it's a fantastic series. I highly recommend it. The 3rd book was really great. I did feel like it was a little bit rushed sometimes, but with the plot line, I mean, I guess it kind of made sense. Overall, I enjoyed it so much. The artwork is really nice. It's not like this colorful, flashy artwork. It's definitely subtle, and there's not a lot of action, like characters moving around a whole lot, but I mean, it's still beautiful, and I love the series. It's probably one of my favorite graphic novel series. It's definitely interesting. It makes you think. It raises a lot of interesting questions. So it's just really good. The next thing that I read was quite an interesting, quirky little book, and that is The House at the End of Hope Street by Minna Van Praagh. This is a book I heard about from, who was it? I want to say it was Mercedes from Mercy's Bookish Musings, and I probably never would have picked it up without hearing her talking about it, but when I heard her talk about it, it made me want to read it. So I finally picked this up and read it. It is about this house that basically is invisible to most people, but it appears to certain women when they need it. And they find this house and they go stay there, and they have 99 days to get their lives together. It's really cool because the past residents that have stayed there are like Agatha Christie, Virginia Woolf, it says on the back here, Dorothy Parker, just so many really cool women, and that's probably my favorite part about it. The house is magical. It's a very magical, whimsical story, which I also loved. So I just really enjoyed this, and I loved seeing how the different tenants, how their lives turned out at the end, and it's a very good book. I ended up giving this a 4 stars. The last thing that I have to talk about is The Crossroads of Should and Must, Find and Follow Your Passion by Elle Luna. So I just randomly picked this up in the library. I thought the title sounded interesting, and then it's one of those books that just has like a lot of illustrations, so it's not like a full-length novel. It's very cool. So the idea of this book is that you have should in your life and you have must, and should is things that you feel you should do, but must is something that you're so passionate about that you just have to do it. And this is about discovering your must if you don't know what that is, or how to pursue your must if you do find out what it is. And it was really interesting. I loved all the illustrations. They were beautiful, and I loved that aspect brought into the book. It made it very interesting. I feel like I wanted to get more out of it than I did, though. Therefore, I think I gave it a 3 stars on Goodreads. But I really just loved flipping through this, and it's something I would be like, yeah, check it out from the library. It's a cool little book. So yeah, that's my feelings on that. That's everything I had to talk about that I have read. So now we're going to move on to currently reading. I've got this bad habit where I want to read all the books at the same time, and so I start like 5 different books at once. That's kind of what's happened here. So I think I have like 3 or 4 books that I'm in the middle of right now. I'll just go in the order that I started them. Murder on the Orient Express by Agatha Christie. I've just really been wanting to read an Agatha Christie book, so I just went for this one because it's the one I own. I'm only on page 28, so I literally just started, but I put it down for these next things that you will see. So I will get back to it. Next, I picked up Augie and Me, 3 Wonder Stories by R.J. Palacio. I loved Wonder. It's one of my favorite books. So obviously I had to read this. I didn't even know it existed until a couple of days ago. But as soon as I found out about it, I went to my library and picked it up. So I started reading it because I couldn't help myself. I'm on page 52. I want to continue with it. It's so good. But the Rainbow-thon started the other day, so I decided to read my readathon TBR books instead of continuing this, but this will be what I pick up as soon as the readathon is over. So speaking of the readathon, I picked up Liar Inspirer by Rebecca Steed. So this is what I'm reading, and I'm planning on finishing it tonight actually, but yes, I will be reading this and then continuing on with my Rainbowthon TBR, which I'll leave the link to that video down below if you haven't seen it. I don't like having a bunch of books that I'm reading at one time, but that's just how it happens sometimes for me. So anyway, that's it for this video. I really hope that you guys enjoyed it, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye!